I do not remember my brother. I wish I did. He was already a man at the time when he took that journey on to try to start a new life. He wanted to kind of get a foothold here in America so that when we got over to the United States, that we would at least have a place to stay, and he would have like a steady job and be able to, you know, kind of ease the family into this transition, into this new place. The desperation of an individual that was willing to leave a country that they know for 25 years to cross an unknown amount of ocean and space to a place that you're not even guaranteed if you're going to make it over there. There's stories of pirates intersecting boats, pulling them into Cambodia, pulling them into Thailand, raping, pillaging people on that boat. The Vietnamese people were willing to take that risk, to risk it all for a better life for their family, for themselves. In that refugee boat, they had about 80 to 85 people packed onto this raggedy boat. Everybody died except two people. A young girl and a 80-year-old something lady survived. My brother died of starvation. They had to toss his body, like everybody else's body, overboard so that, you know, disease won't spread on that small boat. I don't know where in the ocean, what part he got tossed or how far he went before he died, but I can tell you, I can't imagine this, the thought knowing that, you know, I died in the sea, you know, or like knowing that those people, seeing people die in that boat, how much of a how much depression, how much anger, how much sadness was on that boat, how hopeless those people were. I can't imagine. Sometime, I don't know when, in the time frame of us landing here in Chicago, did she find out the story that what happened to my brother. But she found out, but she didn't tell me for the longest time. It took years. And she definitely withheld that story for obvious reasons for a long time. And I think she wasn't ready to tell me until I became a man. My mom lived a life of struggle. Our family was extremely poor in Vietnam. She had a hard life growing up, extremely hard life growing up. It got to a point where my family needed money so bad that she had to sell her virginity to a man to bring money for the family so that we can live and survive. And that tells you something, man. It's just like, I couldn't imagine the life my mom grew up with. You know, she doesn't talk much about it, but I can tell you that she had a very hard life. At the time that we were getting ready to leave, the North already overtaken the South and occupied it. There was a lot of struggles going on. Families from the South were fleeing the country to seek a better life because of the situation that was going on with the Communist Party taking over Vietnam. My mom had an opportunity to flee the country with not our entire family, but my sisters and myself at the time, and she took that chance. She literally had around $10 US dollars, so she took that money, and that's all we had to our name. We didn't land immediately in Chicago or the United States. We spent the year living in the Philippines at FOB Freedom. I wish I can tell you I remember much about that experience. All I can tell you is I can only picture and remember bits and pieces of the situation there. And it was tough living. You know, we didn't know anybody. She had to rely on the other refugees who were fleeing and built almost like a little community. When I sit back and I talk to my mom, she explained to me the hardship, you know, the unknown of living there daily, trying to find food, trying to survive so that we can come over to America. I can tell you it was a time frame of struggle to the point that my sisters and my mom wouldn't want to share a single story with me. Every time I try to ask them, they would change the subject or talk about something else. So I try not to dig. You can tell a lot in a person's eyes when you ask them certain things, you know, and I can tell when I asked my sisters later down when I became a man about their experience in that camp. I can tell you by just looking in their eyes and my mom's eyes, it wasn't something that was pleasant or something that they wanted to share. When we came to Chicago, she was 35 years old. I know my mom and my sisters knew immediately when we were placed where we were. You know, they were at that time when they can process information and experience and see the environment that they were in. And through that, they sheltered me. Or if we were going to go outside when I was younger, they would bring me everywhere, right? So I was never alone for the first 5 to 8 years of landing there. I was an innocent child. And like any children, when they are young, they're innocent, right? And I guess that's what they were trying to do, was to keep my innocence. When I turned like 6, 7, was when I started, to really understand things and experience things. And I always wondered why, we always slept on the floor on a mattress, and then I always wondered why, we didn't have certain things, or when we went to the grocery store and, I asked for certain things like snacks, and my mom and my sister were like, oh yeah, I'll get it for you later, I was wondering but then I realized later on why, my mom and my sister couldn't come to terms or couldn't come to tell me, hey, we're poor. It was just us, my 2 sisters, they were teenagers at the time, young teens, and she had no one, and she had to rely on her wits, and she couldn't show fear to us, that she was afraid, so she had to do what she needed to do and be the strong woman, be that rock that was required, and she did it. I think when I started to experience oh shit, this is a rough spot, was I at like 8, 9, when I could finally go out there and play with the my neighborhood friends, and we're outside, and we just when you're out there and you at a young age really started to kind of start seeing people act a certain way, violence being presented in front of your face, well, not particularly at me, but at certain individuals on the streets. When you grow up in an environment that hated the police, and a lot of your friends at that time hated the police because maybe their parents brought them up not trusting the police. I grew up with the notion that the cops were bad and don't trust the police, and they're corrupted, they're not good, because you hear that from your friends in grade school. You see it on the streets from all these gangbangers that I grew up knowing, because they knew me, because that's the only environment that I knew. So I, in a sense, kind of trusted them, oh yeah, don't trust the police. At the time they call them 5-0, don't trust the 5-0. I remember, playing b-ball, dribbling in a corner, and this cop car pulled up. He was by himself. It was a marked police car. He stopped. I was thinking in my head, oh shit, this dude's about to fuck with us, or whatever. Because that was my first experience personally with the police. And he stepped out the car, and we were intimidated. We're kids, we were brought up to fear them. And he was like, hey, I'm officer. He said his name, and I wish I remember his name. He's like, hey, this is the beat I patrol. It's dangerous out here. And he was talking with us. He was just shooting the shit. And he's like, if you guys ever need anything, you let me know. And he handed me his business card. He's like, call me anytime. I stopped and talked to these kids because I remember what that guy did for me. So I did the same thing back. Stop talking to these kids, man. Build a rapport with these kids. Work that hood. Knew them by their first name. Joke around with them. They're kids too. In the end of the day, it's just trying to build that rapport and just tell them, hey, man, this life that this environment that you're living in doesn't have to be the end all be all. There's more to this if you want more. If you want to go out there and do better and strive and get a degree or chase your passion, it's out there for you, man. Don't think that this is it, because this is not just it. And I tell them my story too, like, hey, man, this is where I grew up, bro. I was with you like this, and so just being able to relate to some of these kids and got to get to know them and see some changes in them, that was worth it.
there's no other job out there, career field, that you can be able to touch somebody's life like you can being a police officer. We chose to do this job because we wanted to make a difference, but we don't have an outlet a lot of times to talk to people. We don't have an outlet to go out there and reach out, and cops turn to alcohol, cops turn to medication, and over time that doesn't work, and what do? They take their lives. I've been an officer here for 12 years, 2 with Park Ridge and 10 with Chicago PD. And obviously 2 over there in LA, but that's 14 years total. Yeah, the politicians don't back us, the mayor doesn't back us, the DA doesn't back us, the bosses don't back us. You know, a lot of them, they get in that position because they get merit. And merit promotions, like it's one of those promotions, like it's not what you know, it's who you know. The way things are going and the way this department is and the policies and everything that we can't do it. We can't do our jobs. This place has sucked the soul of me of wanting to be a police officer right out of me. It took the passion right out of me, you know, and I that's the one thing I always wanted to do, was to be a police officer, to serve my community, to protect those who can't protect themselves. I enjoyed this. I enjoy running and gunning and going after criminals. You know, that was my passion. I grew up from the fucking hood. That's what made me want to be on this side of the law, because I saw that lifestyle. I lived that. I experienced that life firsthand. And I don't want kids that don't have a choice in life because they came here with no money, they came here with no connections and whatnot, that they were forced to live in that environment. And there's plenty of people who are in that type of environment that lives like that, you know, and they live there because they had no choice. Good, honest people. One thing that we do have a choice and we do have in our control is our attitude. It's how much effort you want to put, right? The attitude and effort will always be in our court. So no matter where you're born, in what lifestyle or what environment, if you have the right attitude and you have the right effort, you will go far in life.
I was like any other teen, trying to fit in. Hung out with the wrong crowd, trying to be cool, you know, smoking cigarettes, trying to drink some alcohol, hanging out late, you know, defying my mom, my sisters, you know, wanted to impress my friends, talk back to my teacher, cut school, get bad grades. I did all that. You know, looking back, am I proud of those moments? Absolutely, I was not. I was steered the wrong way for a while. You know, being a teenager, I remember like 13, 14, 15, 16, around that age. I mean, it became a norm to me, living in that type of environment. You know, walking on the street, seeing a bunch of gangbangers hanging out. We lived on Sunnyside, and that place in Uptown was one of the biggest gang-infested areas at that time. I mean, we were in the block of vice lords, four corner hustlers, and on the other side of Sunnyside, the south side of that was Latin Kings, and they would go to war, fight each other constantly, and there was Gangster's Disciple about like 2 blocks away, so it was a constant gangs pulling up in cars, getting out, getting into fist fights, getting shot, seeing people shot in the street. It became the norm to me, you know. I thought that was normal. Seeing somebody shot, laying on the streets, you know, police tape around, seeing crackheads and, you know, people who use drugs on a daily, that was normal to me. It didn't really start to hit me until I would say when I reached 17 years old. When I really sat back and I looked at my life and the people I was hanging out with, I was like, my God, like, if you continue down this path, it's not going to end well.
I was big into Bruce Lee. I loved Bruce Lee, and I was like, damn, I'm gonna take some martial arts. So I started taking Hapkido and start training in that. And then my mom's friend, who lives in Florida, her son was a lieutenant in the Army, and he just graduated from Ranger School. So at the time we had VHS, right? So she's like talking to my mom over the phone. They were best friends, you know, it's typical women gossiping. She's like, oh yeah, my son just graduated this tough course called Ranger School. And so she sent that VHS over to my mom, and my mom gave it to me. She was like, hey, you should watch this.
I'm like, oh yeah? I was like, yeah, sure, why not? I mean, I got nothing better to do. So she handed me the VHS, and I popped it in, and it was Ranger School. It's talking about commandos and going to Ranger School, and I was like, what the hell is this? It really sparked my interest. I was like, so the documentary showcased these soldiers from all walks of the Army, from officers to enlisted, going through this leadership course. But at the time, I didn't know it was a leadership course. They sold it as a school for commandos, you know. And they showed the ratio of people failing and how much these soldiers had to endure to earn that Ranger tab. That was something at the time, something I wanted. I was like, oh my God, this looks like it was extremely tough. This might be something I want to do. So, you know, after finishing that documentary, that weekend I went to Barnes & Noble's because the internet wasn't prevalent at the time. At the time, I think the closest was we had AOL dial-up, you know. And so I went to Barnes & Noble's and started doing some research on the Rangers.
Bought pretty much all the fucking books on Army Rangers, all the way from the beginning. You know, the Martyr Rangers, Robert, you know, all that. Learn about the history of what the Ranger Regiment was, and how, you know, Point du Hoc, you know, World War II, how they stormed the beach of, you know, Omaha Beach, you know, the whole ordeal. I was like, this
is something I want to be a part of, and that planted a seed in my head.
Then, you know, 9/11 kicked off, and I was going to Hapkido that day. It was in the mornings, and over the radio I heard, and Howard Stern, for some reason I was listening to Howard Stern.
I guess he didn't know that it was serious at the moment. He's like, oh, a plane hit the one of the towers. I think they hit the antenna. You know, he was kind of joking about it. I didn't think much of it because, you know, I was pulling up to class and it was early in the morning. When I finished class, my sister's shop she had was a couple of blocks away, so I stopped by to see how she was doing. And I walked into the shop, and I remember the TV was on, and everybody was just looking at the TV. And it showed one of the towers on fire. And I was like, what the heck is going on? And then I saw another airplane hit the second tower. I was like, holy shit. And it was just a very somber, like, you know, the news reporters, the way they were reporting is like, it was a terrorist attack. And, you know, I was just in awe of what happened. Seeing those buildings on fire, seeing people jump off them from the top of the level because they would rather leap to their death than be burned to death. And seeing those towers collapse really affected me, you know. It made me sad, but at the same time, it made me angry that somebody would do this to America, you know. And at that time, I was already interested in having the thought of joining the military. But when I saw those towers on fire, when I saw that plane being hit, when they zoomed in on that person falling from one of the towers really nailed down inside me that is something that I wanted to do, was fight for my country. I went to see a recruiter behind my mother's back, and I was like, I want to join. I want to become a Ranger. And at that time, they had a Ranger contract available. And I was like, this is what I want to do. And so they started the process of me becoming a Ranger. It took about a year because I was in delayed entry program at the time because I still had to finish school. I almost failed school. I almost failed high school. I ditched a lot. I thought it was cool not going to school. And when I decided to change my life, it took me a little longer to graduate than my friends did because of all the days that I missed. So by the time that I was able to join, I would say I was about 20 years old.
This is what it's like on the receiving end. Last night, a square mile in central Baghdad seemed like hell on earth. An inferno. ITV News cameras recorded the barrage from hotel balconies, and it was a truly chilling sight. This is going to be a big bang. This is on a completely different scale from everything else that has gone before. This isn't just an attack on bricks and mortar. It is an assault on the human senses, and as you can see, much of the Baghdad skyline, well, it's now flames and billowing smoke. Cruise missiles and bombs brought tons of high explosive to the heart of Baghdad's administrative district. This was about demolishing Saddam Hussein's symbols of power. They also hit at least one of his presidential palaces. During a short lull, ambulance crews took to the streets to tend to civilian casualties. The let-up did not last long, however. More cruise missiles, 300 of these frightening weapons were aimed at Baghdad during the night. The last arrived here as an air raid siren was going off just before dawn. John Irvine, ITV News, Baghdad.
I got placed in Alpha Company, 1st Platoon, Bad Mothers. A lot of those guys had already 5 tours underneath their belt. And I remember landing in country. We were preparing, months ahead for it, but nothing could prepare the experience of it when that C-17 opened up, and you could smell that you were no longer in America, We were in the Triangle of Death at the time. It was Fallujah, Mosul, Baghdad. We were placed in Mosul. And I remember sitting there on the airfield just awaiting orders, and I can see the 375 guys leaving. And we were taking their place. And I was like, oh man, this is it, man. This is all that training that we went through. Now we get to put all that training into actual real life. Explosive breach, land on the X, speed, surprise, violence of action. And we were tasked with kill or capture these bad guys that were making bombs or causing havoc in that part of town. And our squad leaders and our team leaders and all those higher up guys were out there getting briefed immediately to get on target, to do hits. Because you gotta understand, it was like early 2000s, 2004, 2005. This was the peak of the motherfucking war. If there was a time to get after it, that was the time to get after it. And that was the type of tempo we were on. Multiple missions a day, doing missions with CAG. CAG would have us pull security for them or do a simultaneous hit in a certain block. And it was very fast paced, and it was something definitely new to me. You know, I saw it in the movies, I saw it in documentaries, of like, what it's like to go to war, but nothing beats real life, man. And I can tell you, that experience was something that I am forever grateful for. There were many missions that we were on that were like, oh shit, man, fuck. And I remember one mission we hit. We landed on the X, got there, did explosive breach on the gate. We entered, we cleared the main floor, and as we were approaching the staircase, and the staircase I remember vividly was a spiral staircase leading up to the second level. As we were going up the stairwell, we saw a hand reach out and drop a grenade. And that grenade landed on one of our guys' foot, and thank God it did not go off. It was a dud grenade. He kicked it and it didn't go off. And I promise you, if it went off, a lot of us would have been killed that very fucking moment. And we went up there, and there was two of them, and we dealt with them. We did what we had to do and deal with those individuals. I was a rifleman, one of the assaulting elements, so we got to do a lot of kicking in doors and entry and doing what a ranger does. At that time, there wasn't a lot of MOSs that they have now. I think the regiment right now, there's about 70 MOSs that you can do, but back then there wasn't that many. You were either 11 Bang Bang, 11 Charlie, or very few other admin spots. But, I was an 11 Bravo, man. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to fight. I wanted to bring the fight to the enemy, and we did. There were times when we had not only one, maybe multiple missions a night. I mean, planning hits after hit after hit. And at the time, we were still landing on the X. There wasn't no sneaky ninja shit where we would land 2 miles away from the objective and full in. It was like, we were learning as we go. I was a kid at that time. I still, though I was 21 years old, I still consider myself a kid. Yeah, I saw violence all my life, but to be being put in that position, fighting it in a foreign country was just something different, man. Was I scared? Absolutely, I was scared. But I used that fear to my advantage. A lot of people say, oh, no fear. That's bullshit. Fear is something that you need. Fear is what's going to keep you alive, and that's what kept a lot of us alive. There were countless missions that were definitely hairy. There were, after Black Hawk Down, we try to steer away from doing daytime hits, but there were certain missions that we had to do daytime hits. And there were a couple where they were like, hey, we have to go out there and get this guy, or else he's gonna squirt out of here and we're gonna lose him, and he's a high value target. And I remember being on a couple of those, and those were the most hairiest ones. Not the ones that were at night, but the ones that were during the day. And one of the day missions that we were on, it was hot as balls that day, I remember, because one of my teammates fell out. He became a heat casualty, but we got there, we got into a gun battle. One of the 160th pilot got hit. So one of the terrorists took multiple shots at the Little Bird. One of the rounds ricocheted inside the cockpit and hit one of the 160th guys. We remember that, and they had to pull away. We killed that dude. Then we had to capture that one of the high-value targets that we were going after on that daytime hit, and we did. And when we were extracting them out, because I remember that hit vividly, because it was just one shit storm after another, and we were heading down a very narrow street. And I remember going down there, and we had Humvees at the time. We didn't even have Strikers. We have soft-shelled Humvees. And we were in that vehicle driving down ducks in a row, going down this narrow street. And I was the second vehicle in the element from pulling out of that mission. And I saw this maroon 94 Camry driving, reversing at such a high rate of speed. I was like, oh, what the fuck? That vehicle hit the first Humvee, and we saw a cloud of smoke coming from the trunk. We didn't realize it until we did our AAR later on that they had explosives in that trunk that did not go off. I guess what they were trying to do was set up an ambush, right? So that vehicle reversed at a high rate of speed, hit the first Humvee, tried to initiate that explosion. The explosion didn't work. There were multiple people in that car. They stuck their AK out and started shooting at us. And at that time, that initial Humvee hit our Humvee, and we kind of reversed into almost a V fighting force. And I remember raining down gunfire on that freaking vehicle, man. I've never seen body parts being blown up until that very moment on a hot ass day in Mosul, when those 50 cal rounds and from our gunfire being laid down on that vehicle. As time progressed, as we continue to just stay there and go through missions and see certain things and do certain things, you kind of grow. When you start seeing violence a lot, you kind of grow numb to it, in a sense. You know, that's what happened through that deployment. In the beginning, it was like, oh my gosh, you know, this is something new to me. Then when you experience it over and over and over again, then it just becomes business as usual. If you picture high standards in the Ranger Regiment, Baraza and Brem, and a lot of those men who were in that leadership role and Baraza was definitely one of the shining stars in our platoon. I joined as a private. Baraza was a man of intimidation, let's put it that way. He was fair, but he didn't fuck around. He held the standard high. He was a PT stud. He was a tactician. You better come with greatness. You better meet the standard, or else you are going to get your ass fucking smoked. We always joke like, man, Baraza is if we were gonna go to war and we were gonna go to the shit, Sergeant Baraza was the man to lead the charge. We know we were gonna get shit done. It hits home more when someone close to you in that tight-knit platoon loses their lives. And these guys were bigger than life, man. Barraza, 6 foot something, 200 something pound, yoked, the epitome of a fucking ranger, man. That scary motherfucker, 24 years old, bro. Multiple deployments. I mean, if you can picture a fucking Army Ranger, that was Barraza. The deployment where Brem and Barraza got killed, that was the first real blow to us. You know, we always heard of other guys losing people, you know, and of course when you lose somebody in the service, I don't give a shit what branch, it affects you, you know? You're like, fuck, you know, another person died, somebody's husband, brother, sister, and whatnot, you know? And to lose somebody like that, and Sergeant Brem too, was a big blow to our platoon. We had to live by that standard. And Barraza brought it. Barraza fucking brought it. And I thank him for it. He changed my life. He was, I would for sure 100%, is one of the men that really affected me personally, mentally, mold me into the man I became today. I had him to thank for it. Coming back stateside, going to their funeral, going to their wake, and having to stand in front of their picture and salute them, and knowing they're not there anymore, it really, it changes you. There's many guys who've done way more than me in the regiment and continued on and continued doing amazing things. It was a super fast tempo, man. We went to war, we came back, we went on a little block leave, we trained back up to go back to war. And it was constantly like that over and over and over for years. For years, you know. There's guys who stayed in for a long time. And I wasn't one of them. To me, like, war affects everybody differently. It affected me differently. I just knew that fork in the road was time for me to leave that life and pursue my other dream, was to become a police officer. When I left the Army, I wish I could tell you that it was an easy transition. It was not. I didn't have anybody to talk to. My mom didn't know. My mom wouldn't understand. My sisters wouldn't understand. My little brother wouldn't understand. You know, I tried to go to college, to try to do the college route for the first year. And, you know, college wasn't for me, man. You know, being in that classroom with a bunch of young kids who don't even know what you went through, it was tough. I spent that first year fighting inner demons in my room. I didn't go out. I went to school, I came back home. I hung out, I drank by myself, dealing with my own fucking inner demons for a year. It was the roughest year of my fucking life. You know, when you're in a unit that is always at this tempo, you know, at this standard, then you leave it to go back to the civilian world, where now you don't have structure anymore. You're trying to find your way, and you got to deal with loss, and you got to deal with the things that you have done and seen. It affects you. That incident was definitely one of the reasons why I would say I didn't re-enlist. I was going through a lot of trauma. My friends stateside, they don't understand. I had no one to reach out to. You know, and what really got me out of there is, you know, I found God. God really brought me out of that dark time in my life. That year, man, I stopped working out. I grew my hair out. I was a fucking hippie. I drank, became skinny. It was just, I was lost, man. And when I was able to pull myself out, I cleaned myself up, got back to PTing, got back to being the individual that I could be. I started to apply for the police departments, and I got hired. And thanks to him and reflecting on like the loss of Barraza and Brem is like, they wouldn't want me to live my life this way. You know, what they taught me, the ultimate sacrifice they gave, they wouldn't want me to live this life of depression, of drinking, of just dealing with all these inner demons. So I owe it to them to do something with my life, and that's when I decided, it's like, you know what, I'm going to become a police officer. I'm gonna take everything that I learned in the military and apply it into the police force. To get me out of that slump, you know, I started doing jiu-jitsu, and I remember one day I was rolling with a detective, and he worked for a suburban department, and I was like, hey man, I'm so interested in becoming a cop. You know, what can I do? I don't even know where to start. So he printed out a couple of police departments that were hiring in Illinois. So I applied for like a couple of these police departments here in Illinois, suburban departments, and one of them picked me up. It was Park Ridge. There was about, at the time, you know, there wasn't that many police departments that were hiring, and we had I remember showing up to take the test, you know, the PT test and the written test. It was all the same day. There was about like 200 something applicants, and they were literally looking for 3 people. But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give it my all, and I crushed it. And they hired me for, you know, my little time there, and that department was a rich department, you know, meaning that the town that I was in was a rich town. So there wasn't a lot of crime, there wasn't a lot going on, and I was a young rookie officer. So I was like, man, I can't start my career this way. Like, there's no way I wanted to run and gun, I wanted to be the police. So, you know, I was like, I'm gonna apply to work for other departments. 2 places that I applied simultaneously was Chicago and LAPD. And LAPD picked me up almost immediately. From the time I applied to the time I went to their police academy was 6 months. I was an LAPD beat cop. We always start off as a patrol officer. Worked for Olympic Division. Got to do police work. It was a lot of fun. We did a lot of running and gunning. I got to really experience what it was like to be the police. You know, you better come squared away. Every single thing that you're gonna that should be done, you're gonna be doing. Kicking in the door, making sure the shotguns load correctly. Hey, boot, do this. Hey, boot, do that. They had standards there. And you better come with the uniform pressed. You better come with your badge shined. It was a different atmosphere, a different way of policing. And I had to learn real quick that there was a big difference from Illinois way of policing and the LAPD way. What can I say about LAPD, man? It's if you wanted to be the police, that was the place to be the police. Locking down a block to catch a armed suspect with officers, arresting them, tasing people. I mean, I got to experience all of that in the short amount of time I was there in LA. I remember chasing an individual down the alley. I was actually working the desk that time. And the airship, which is the helicopter unit, said, hey, there's a couple of guys with this contraption trying to steal packages from the mailbox. And they're giving out the position, and I was working with one of the officers on the desk. They're like, "Hey, that's literally half a block from there." So we went out there, and we're like, "Hey, police stop!" And the chase ensued, man. Chasing these guys down the alley. I was thinking in my head, I was like, "Oh my God, this is what being the police is about." I'm like chasing these people, like this suspect down the alley, jumping over the fence. Grabbing them, pulling them out, placing them under arrest. I mean, I got to experience all that as a cop out there. And trust me, man, the volume of calls you get in LA are astronomical, man. Literally, when you switch on that siren and the light goes off, now you're like trying to go over the air, give dispatch the plate number, the direction of travel, at the same time try to stop this vehicle. It's your adrenaline. You go from 0 to 60 like that. In police work, it's like that. Multitasking is definitely one of those things that you have to master. And being a police officer, that's one of those skill sets that you needed, and that's what we had.
Back in the days when, the golden era, the day of World War I, World War II, where teenagers were lying about their age to go to war, because that's what they believed in. They believe in America. They believe in fighting evil. But nowadays, even the army is having a hard time recruiting people because no one wants to do this job. No one does. No one wants to be a soldier. No one wants to be a police officer because it's hard. It's that saying, good times create weak people. And we're at the point right now that we have a lot of weak people because we lived so good for so long as Americans. Look at the creature comforts that we have. We have everything instantaneously on our phone, on our smartphone. You want to order pizza, smartphone. You want to order Uber, smartphone. You want to order alcohol, smartphone. So everything is so easy now, and people forget what it took for this country to be where it is.
It's just funny how things work out, man, because at the time, Chicago, there was a shit ton of applicants. It didn't matter how well you did on the written test, you were put in a lottery system. And they don't call you for about 2 years. So you're into this they give you this random number. And in about approximately 2 years, they'll give you a call, hey, and that was the ongoing draw of Chicago, was every 2 years. And it worked out that when I left LAPD, Chicago called. They're like, hey, you want to come on and be a cop? I was like, hell fucking yeah. So I left LAPD, I came back to Chicago, went through my third police academy, and got onto Chicago Police Department. Leaving LAPD, my standards of what a police academy was high, because LAPD academy is no joke, man. Their standards was high. If you don't pass, you get dropped. When I started my recruit class for LAPD, I think we had close to almost 100 recruit. We graduated if I remember correctly, about 40 to 50 officers. Here in Chicago, everybody passed. There was no high standards. You know, they treated you like a number. It was really relaxed. And I was like, oh my God, if they're training their officers this way, these officers are in for a rude awakening when they hit the streets. If I'm a civilian and I live in the city of Chicago and I'm paying taxes, I'm expecting police officers to come out of the academy, obviously not like with a ton of experience, but at least with the cornerstone, with the building blocks of being a good police officer. And I can tell you Chicago has done a horrible job of doing that. It's not your typical 9-to-5 job. We don't just show up, clock in, do our monotonous work, get yelled at by our boss, and then know that, you know, we're gonna go home at the end of the night. This job, like it was in the military, like as being a firefighter, is one of those jobs that you sign a blank check, that you don't know if you're gonna come home at the end of the day. For the city of Chicago to implement that type of training regime for the academy is unacceptable. You're planting the wrong seed right from the get-go onto these officers. And we can tell the difference when I was out there on the field, working the field, even as a rookie, how some of these officers react or acted, you know. They weren't, a lot of them weren't prepared for what was really out there because they weren't trained to that standard. People think that we're robots. People think we don't have emotions. People think that the traumas that we see day in and day out as a police officer doesn't affect it. It affects every single officer in one way or another, right? And a lot of officers don't have other people to talk to. So they turn to alcohol. They turn to different outlets. And unfortunate that there are officers, and same thing in the military, that take their lives on a day-to-day basis because there's just so much trauma a person can deal with. Sitting there, you gotta dissect the call. You gotta show up on scene. You're going there, lights and sirens. Your adrenaline's already up. You gotta deal with the suspect's actions, the way he or she is presenting themselves towards you. I've been in many situations where I had to draw down on people and very close to shooting them. And when you're placed in that position where you have to make split-second decisions and where it's either life or death for him or for you, it's different. We're human beings like everybody else. When we show up at work for roll call, I'm joking with my partner. We're talking about hey man, I saw this movie the other night. It was so funny, you should go watch it. Or we're talking about, oh, where are we gonna go eat? I can tell you, from my 14 years of being a cop, there's never a moment where when I wake up in the morning when I'm brushing my teeth or getting dressed, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to go out there and kill somebody. Or I can't wait to go out there and shoot somebody with a gun. There was never that moment. But we understand that if that moment arises, we have to do our job to protect the citizens, to protect our partners to our left and right. And we understand that. But no officer that I've dealt with or had the opportunity to work with had that malice intention of wanting to go out there to kill somebody. You see officers being crucified on the internet through YouTube because these people got time to sit here in their living room on their desk, comfortable, under no stress, and try to judge this officer when he or she is under extreme stress. You don't know what calls you're gonna get that day you're working. Every day is different. You know, and you gotta come there, be professional, do your job to the best of your ability, make the right decision so that you can save lives and protect those that you swore to protect. No one wants to be the police anymore because of the rhetoric of what these politicians and the news are pushing out there, are scaring away candidates, good candidates. Famous video that was released on social media. There was a domestic call that came out that this dude was beating his girl. So she called the police on him, and he had a gun. So an officer, a Chicago police officer, it was caught on a ring camera. He was up the stairs dealing with this suspect and this girl. And the dude presented a gun at him. Being a police officer, if somebody raised a weapon at me, I am 100% justified to shoot that person, right? Because I was in immediate danger of losing my life. I was placed in a position where that guy could have turned that gun and shot her. But that officer, over that ring camera, you can hear the audio. He's like, my man, put it down, put it down. And as that guy came closer to him, he turned around and he ran down the stairs. Thank God that guy didn't shoot that officer. But that's the type of police officer that are out there on the streets now. Those that don't want to do their job anymore. Those that are second guessing themselves. Now that officer, I don't know if he is still on the job, but if he is, shame on him. He was in the right position, justifiably, the letter of the law, to use force to protect her, and he chose not to. Being a cop, people think it's just, you're going after bad guys, right? You're going after murderers, you're going after people who rob people. Though that's every dream of a police officer when he or she gets on the force, that they want to do that, get drugs off the street, want to get gangbangers, want to get killers, right? But there's another side of policing that a lot of people don't see that affects, I think, police. I can tell you one call that I went on that affected me way worse than seeing a gangbanger shot or seeing somebody, just a person lying dead on the street. Going on this call where, this lady called the cops because she walked in on her boyfriend sexually assaulting this young girl. And this wasn't the first time that this happened to this poor young girl. And it affected me so differently, like this poor helpless young girl was being sexually assaulted by this grown man, angered me so much. And it left such an impact on me, negatively, that, man, these are the calls cops go on that people don't realize. Kids being sexually assaulted. Other calls that was domestic abuse calls, being able to provide help for a spouse to get her away from an abusive husband was something that, that affected me also, because my mom went through that. Calls like this affects a police officer. And I can tell you it affected me. Seeing that poor little girl being raped. And I mean, obviously I didn't see that, but knowing that she experienced that over and over and over again. And for me, putting cuffs on that dude took a lot of restraint on my part, because I wanted to beat the shit out of his ass. Obviously, we have to fall under the letter of the law. There are certain things that we can't do, and I have to be a professional, even in that situation where I know technically, if you want to play in the gray area, the right thing to do is just to beat his ass, right? Any normal person who sees that trauma happening to such a young girl would want to do that, but that's where we draw the line. 2 years in as a cop, and like I said, man, every day is different, right? You never know. And my partner and I going to that call and witnessing that and seeing that the look on that little girl's face and then the mom and dealing with that dude, it took a lot of restraint, man. And not to bring that home is another thing, And that's why there's a problem in the police department where, cops take their lives. Now, there's cops out there that will just sit in their squad cars now. And unless they get a call from a dispatch, they're not going to go out there and be proactive anymore. because they don't want to get to that one situation where they can be sued, they can be thrown in jail, they can be stripped of their police powers. That's why a lot of cops left Chicago. There were so many police officers that retired early or just plain out left and lateral to another police department because they were sick and tired of working for a department that does not have their back, a mayor that doesn't give a crap about them, the DEA that definitely don't give a shit about us, or to want to prosecute these criminals. And it just frustrates good cops. Because I tell you what, there's plenty of good cops on the Chicago Police Department. But a lot of them can't do their damn job.
You have a beat, you have a sector that you patrol, right? And you're patrolling that beat, that sector, and you just wait for the dispatch to give you calls in your sector. And there's another sector that like this. You see, like they'll call you and they'll be like, domestic situation, shots fired. You got to respond to that. Battery situation. That means a fight. It's broken out, gang fight or whatever. You just got to be a patrol officer, or you're dealing with like, grandma, trouble breathing, so you're responding with fire. So being a patrol officer, you're responding to everything. You're married to your radio. Well, when you become a SWAT officer, you're not married to your radio anymore in a way. I'm waiting for the patrol officer who can't handle a situation to call me, for me to come in and handle that situation, because that's out of their hands, be it active shooter, be it hostage situation, be it, like I said, terrorist attack, be it any of those calls that they, is out of their realms of expertise and out of their realm of having the right equipment. They call us and we roll in and we just handle business, whatever that may be. You got to deal with the situation at hand, be it a hostage situation. You're dealing with a husband that is just deranged and got into a domestic with his wife and said, hey, you know what, bitch, I'm gonna fucking kill you, and held her as at hostage. Or just like a home invasion, somebody breaks into somebody's house and now they're like, tripped a silent alarm, and cops came and now they have no choice but to try to take a hostage. You have to come in there calm, collective, and cool, and be able to really process, really come up with the right tactics, the right steps to make sure that the patrol officers are safe, you're safe, but most importantly, the person you're trying to save is going to be safe. And you got to do that in an instant.
There's no doubt in my mind that all those officers that responded were heroes, and they saved a lot of lives, because we just don't know how much damage he was prepared to do.
The city of Chicago lost a doctor, pharmaceutical assistant, and a police officer, all going about their day, all doing what they love. This tears at the soul of our city. Remember what is important in life, and that there are others who are part of our larger family who will have a tear and a hole that will never really heal, but will always have a scar.
The Mercy Hospital shooting was an incident where one of the doctors, she broke up with her fiance. She's like, hey, I don't want to get married with you. I'm going to call it off. And he didn't like that. So he's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to come to the hospital. Give me back my ring. I'm going to meet you outside. Just give me back my ring. We're going to call it quits. So unbeknownst to her, he had an intention to kill her and many others in that hospital. So he called her outside, and he shot her to death. He killed her on scene. Then he went inside the hospital and murdered multiple people. And one of the officers, Officer Jimenez, God rest his soul, was one of the officers who was there in the hospital. I guess he was dropping off a packet or an individual at the hospital when this whole thing went down. He got shot in the jugular and he died there in the hospital. So when that whole initial call came out, I was at home. I was not even on duty at the time. It kicked off. One of our teams that was roving around downtown area heard that call being kicked off, the active shooter, and they responded to the scene. And I heard, because I had my radio on, because I was in my basement cleaning my gun at the time, and I heard the call came out. I was like, oh my God. So I called the desk like, hey, I'm responding. So I got dressed, I got in my patrol car, and I headed there. But by the time I got there, the incident was already over. The team that arrived on scene, one of the officers was the one that took out the active shooter. Came there, it was chaotic. There was already officers inside the building. But here's the thing, this is the detriment of the police department there. There was many officers inside that hospital, but a lot of them didn't do anything. They were standing around pulling security in the hallway. You can tell by the footage on the body-worn camera that the lieutenant had that we watched. And that's the detriment of the training or lack of training that the Chicago Police Department had. These officers were like deer in the headlight. And we watched that video unfold. And we saw officers just stand there, not doing a single thing. And then our SWAT guys came on scene. They made entry inside there, located the shooter, and took him out. Of those officers, those SWAT officers who were there on scene, I guarantee you that dude would have killed more people. Because he had a box of ammunition in his pocket. And he was ready to bring the fight. Or take or kill as many people as he could. Being a SWAT cop is different from being in the Ranger Regiment. You know, when I was in the Ranger Regiment, obviously when you're overseas, you're doing hits on mission. You know, that's your job, that's your bread and butter, right? Direct action. Being a SWAT officer is different. You know, you got to deal with people with mental illness. There's warrants you have to deal with. There's SWAT jobs that you're called out to. When I got onto Chicago SWAT, we still did high-risk search warrants where it's not surrounded and called out. We did actual hits into homes, you know, making entry. Now, at the end of my career, when I left, all of our warrants that we serve are all surround and call outs. We don't even do entry anymore. For whatever reason they deem was more safe for these police officers. I would say some of the SWAT jobs that we have to deal with, difficulty-wise, it was a lot of sitting around and waiting. You know, people think, you know, when we come on scene. Here's the thing: Chicago has a way of dealing with barricaded subject. Every SWAT team is different. Not all SWAT teams are the same. I can tell you, there's certain SWAT teams when they come on scene, they give that a suspect 15 minutes, 20 minutes tops to surrender, or they're going to gas the building, right? So the Chicago Police Department deals differently. That's the last thing they want to do is use force. So we deal with a lot of sitting around and waiting. We will be on a SWAT job for 6, 7, 8 hours, letting a negotiator talk this dude's ear off before we even do anything. And I think that's the most difficult thing for me to deal with, and a lot of these officers that are on the team have to deal with, that we weren't able to do our job. that this could have ended a lot quicker, but they chose to just draw it out because of the political climate of Chicago. Mentally and physically, you're wearing out your team. And I think a lot of the leadership don't realize that. They'll push it. They'll push us. Our tempo was so fast because they want us to man events, like any events like concerts, baseball events, Chicago Bull games, football games, whatever. And we have to do all that, respond to SWAT jobs, and they'll keep us for hours on end. And if there's another SWAT job that kicks off, we have to respond to that. But they don't care about the well-being of us. They'll keep us out there fatigued, and there's guys who would literally fall asleep standing because they're working doubles, even triples. I was on the SWAT team for 5 years. I thought, being on a SWAT team, I would get to do what SWAT officers got to do. I got to experience that for the first year and a half before the whole pendulum swung the way it did here on the Chicago SWAT team. And it became a mental drag in my mind. It mentally wore me down. The Chicago Police Department mentally wore me down. It drained my morale to a point where I didn't want to do it anymore. Who would want to be a cop nowadays? For a chance to be the next YouTube sensation, to hang out to dry. People who are intelligent don't want to touch that field. So what are you left with? You're left with scraping the barrel. And I've witnessed that firsthand on my last year on this department. For the veteran officers who worked there for over a decade, right? Now they're gonna have to deal with these recruits that are not of the same mindset or cut from the same cloth. Now, if everybody stood together and unified and like, enough is enough, we need to turn this police department around, I think this department would change, but a lot of them, they're selfish. And I was tired of working for people like that. So that's when I decided to call it quits. Because that department was not full of leaders, they were just full of followers that just wanted to hold that position, because once you get there, you're now an exempt. You're not working the streets anymore. You get paid a cush salary, you get a driver. A right person would step up and speak their mind, and there were bosses that did, and they got demoted. I was left at another fork in the road where I was left with two decisions. The first decision is be like everybody else on my team, bitch and moan about the politics, about everything else, but continue to be on that hamster wheel, chasing that carrot on the stick, which is a pension. Or go this other route and chase the unknown. And I chose to chase the unknown. I chose to risk it all. If you want something in your life, you will do everything possible to prepare for it. Being a SWAT officer was a dream of mine. I wrapped up my career as a police officer. I have no regrets. I did everything I wanted to do to the best of my ability as a cop. Now I'm called to answer a different calling. And I think God pushed me down this path. As hard as I worked on the police force, in the end of the day, I'm working, of course, towards a bigger goal, bigger picture of serving the community. But it's still a job, right? I clock in, I clock out, I come back home. We Go Home started in 2019 in August, but honestly, it started back at Ranger Regiment. I talk about when you train with your brothers, you bleed with them. You met their families, you met their girlfriends, you met their, mothers, children. You build that bond. It's not just about you. It's about those to your left and right. That's when I realized I can make a bigger impact with my company moving forward than I can on the Chicago Police Department. Who am I to preach that message out to the community and not live it myself? And that's when I decided that I'm going to commit 110%, like I do in everything that I do, that I've done in my past, I'm doing with my company. I'm committing everything I have. My goal and my main mission is to build We Go Home to an 8-figure company. And I'm not doing it for money for myself, but taking that money to give back to the community. We just started the We Go Home Foundation. And I always talk about giving back, and that's the plan with this, to employ veterans, to employ other officers who are leaving the force, to give jobs back to America, to really live the American dream. And the main focus with the foundation is to pay for the widows' mortgages, put their kids through college, help officers, firefighters, military personnel pay for their medical bills, or if they're injured on duty, or if they are out there to try to seek to better themselves in training, to help pay for their training. With We Go Home, I'm able to build a legacy that I will be able to change many people's lives. And we're doing it, instead of talking about it, we're doing it through actions. I get a lot of messages on my Instagram of officers reaching out to me in frustration, like, hey man, I train, I shoot, I go out and do outside courses, but not everybody on my watch is on the same mindset. What can I do to change that? And I tell them, man, you can't change everybody, man. There's going to be certain people who are going to be stuck in their ways. There's going to be certain people who are going to act a certain way. But the one thing that you can do is, even though you might not have rank as a sergeant, as a lieutenant, as a captain, but you are in your own a leader, right? Go out there and set an example. And I promise you, when you do that, officers who are like-minded will be attracted to the way you think, and you guys will get together and build that core group of people that go out and train and make a difference. Nowadays, it's a thing to do to talk down about America. A lot of people who live here in America hates America. But I can tell you the American dream is real. I was a refugee that came from a war-torn country over here, knowing no one. We didn't have anybody here, but America gave us the opportunity. America gave me the opportunity to pursue everything that I wanted. And it was on me, not what this country, what people would like to portray this country to be in a negative light, has provided me with all the opportunities that I wanted. And all I needed to do was give everything I got, and I did. And I will continue to do so.